welcome back to the AfriCanadian Resource Center. We bring you these updates every day from Monday to Friday, 6 p.m. to 7 p.m. And tonight, we're bringing you an entire interview that we had with our very own a member of the East African community here in Toronto who is doing a lot of work in the community, working with young people, really trying to sort of go through COVID and connecting people as they usually do within the community. So we're going to bring you that interview shortly. And we want you to tune in because we talked about so many things ranging from different topics. And we really think you're going to love this interview. But in meantime, as we always do, we're going to bring you a little bit of news, let you know what's going on with COVID, let you know if there's anything, right? Today we had a little bit of news on the continent as well that we're going to be bringing to you shortly. But first, as far as COVID is concerned, they say that the numbers of daily COVID-19 cases reported in Canada increased to 40% in the last week compared to previous one. And obviously, as you have seen throughout the week, even though the numbers went down a little bit, the numbers were still so high. I think yesterday we had about 500 and something. They're saying today new cases in Ontario rose from 548 to 500. So 548 Tuesday to 583 on Wednesday. So you could see the numbers went back up by at least 40, around 40. Let's not do math here. But you can see that the numbers went up a little bit. And then they're saying that but a large number of recoveries meant that active case dropped by more than 100. So that's from last week to this week. Again, that's good. We want those numbers to keep going down. And because again, if you look at a lot of the things, and we always look at this from the angle of business, from socioeconomic, and all of these other things that the community is involved in, we really can't wait for this thing to be over. I think everybody we talk to every day tells us that they are trying to, they're getting used to the new normal. But then when you measure the new normal, you realize it's not something we can maintain for a long time. Anyway, so that's the news as far as the COVID. That's the update that we have for you today. We're going to give you a little bit of more news as we go. What we're going to do today that is different from what we usually do is we're going to bring you an interview throughout the program. And then we're going to come back and talk to you a little bit about the news, let you know what else is happening, and then go back to the interview. And yeah, so let's go to a commercial. And then we'll see you on the other side with the interview. Hey, my name is Kizito Musaimana and I am the founder and executive director of the Rwandan Canadian Healing Center. Currently, we're running a program for African Canadians. The program is called AfriCanadian Resource Center, and it's designed to bring you resources, daily updates on COVID-19, and also learning more about what is going on within the African Canadian community. So we go to the fields, we interview people every day. We want to know more about our community, especially during this time of COVID-19. So we would like to have you there. Make sure you follow us. Find us on Facebook and Instagram as well as YouTube on RCH Center. As well, you can follow us on Twitter on RCH-Center. And make sure to let everybody know that we are available every day from Monday to Friday, 6 p.m. to 7 p.m. I will see you there. All right, so welcome back. So as we said, we're going to bring you an interview that we had earlier today. We're talking to Celestine Nema, who is with the youths of East Africa. She's been running these organizations with many of the East African young youths for the last 5 years, and you are going to learn about that, of course, but you can also learn more about who she is, what she's doing, what they are planning to do going forward. But also, we also talked a little bit about the community, the African community, the state of our community, like as far as mental health is concerned, and all these other things that we all want to sort of look at in terms of how do we move forward as a people, how do we move forward as a society, how do we integrate within the Canadian experience. Those are some of the things we talked about earlier. And so without further ado, let me bring you part one of 3 parts that we're bringing you tonight. All right, so thank you so much, Nema, for joining us.
Oh, it's my pleasure. I absolutely love talking to you. So.
All right, so we like I said, we meant to do, obviously, if it was in a normal time, we would have loved to visit you, and we hope to do that hopefully in the future. But today I just wanted to bring you on to see what you've been up to. I know you are so involved in the community, within the East African community. And so I just wanted to know more about that. But first, let our audience know who is Nema and what do you do
Well, my name is Celestine Nema. I am the president of an organization called the Canadian Youth of East Africa. We are a Toronto-based organization that is focused on mobilizing, mentoring, and motivating East African youth or youth of East African descent here in the city and across the province. And what else? What else about me? I am quite involved in the community. There's a few other things I do. I'm involved in theater. So there's an organization I'm also working on that is doing theater and providing spaces for Black performance artists to be able to sort of like express themselves. So there's that I'm also involved with, and I'm also involved with what is called the Canadian Black Chamber of Commerce. Not fully, but more on the sort of like in the background. But yeah, that's pretty much me.
That's a lot of things you say. See, these days, all I hear when you say anything community oriented, all I want to know is how can I reach you guys? How can I get there? But that's incredible. And I know you and I, when we first met, I believe we were doing your organization was hosting an event for mental health. And,
Yes.
and obviously, you know, for us, the RCHC, one of the things we have set out that our mission is to build a center for healing for individuals. And so when you look at what we're going through during this time of COVID, and let me start this interview there. How do you think, or how do you see our community dealing with this mentally? How are our community doing during this COVID time?
I think our community, you know, we're a very social community, I would say. You've been to one of our events, for example. At least in this African community, we love being around each other, and we love to celebrate things, and we love to spend time together. And so I think when people were separated from each other, there was a little bit of not just an inconvenience, but there was a discomfort that you could feel within the community, because, you know, all of a sudden, like, you know, we couldn't go out to just see friends. We couldn't have the events that we were having before. And so I think the biggest effect that has happened is, you know, we have lost the spaces where we were communing. You know, the spaces where we came together, that almost sort of like disappeared over the past few months because we tended to do this in person. So what I've been trying to do with Youth of East Africa is, it was a little difficult for us to figure out how we would bring in our community back, especially because a lot of our events, like I said, are usually very physical. Like, you know, it's the idea of people meeting in the same space, in the same room. And, you know, it took us some time to sort out how we could engage our audience virtually, because obviously, like, you know, with everything that was happening, we needed to be able to do things virtually. But it took us a few months. Our first event that we were able to do was actually just in August, and we hadn't done anything since about like February. And you can imagine, you know, that's a pretty long time of, like, you know, our audience not knowing exactly what's going on. And we also honestly weren't sure, you know, because we kept thinking, okay, maybe like, you know, outside is going to eventually open up and we're just gonna go back to normal. Let's just wait for that to happen. But it wasn't happening, right? So that's how we ended up deciding to do a virtual event. And you know, what I can say is, when we did that virtual event, we could tell that people were like waiting for something like this. You know, they were almost craving like another, like some form of like just human connection, even though it's virtual. Because a lot of us weren't able to do that, especially for some of us who come here as students. You don't have your families here with you. You don't have, you know, you only have your friends, and all of a sudden it's you in your apartment by yourself. And, you know, how are you supposed to connect with people? You're just talking to your coworkers when you work during the day virtually as well. And so I think our community now is sort of like learning that, you know what, you can actually create these relationships virtually, even if you're not seeing the person in person. I think that's the biggest thing that has come out of this, is being able to see beyond what we're used to.
Okay, and so is there like maybe a setback for people, for members, especially for you and the members in your community or in your organization? Have you seen any setback? Because I feel like for me, not just for our community, by the way, I think this is something that is happening universally, where a lot of people like have been really affected mentally, because it's like, okay, you've been detached from the world. Especially you're saying our community loves to have that idea of what is that hard, what is, you know, that experience. How, on the mental side of things, how do you feel like we're doing compared to the norm?
On the mental side of things, I think we are still struggling. You know, like I've tried to visit, like for myself on a personal level, I've tried to visit a few friends, but I've not seen as many of my friends that I normally do. I would say maybe like what, 30-20% of the people that I would have seen over the summer are the people I've seen. That means those connections, you know, and like, yes, like you said, like the physical connection, even just the physical touch of like having someone near you and not being worried that, oh my goodness, am I putting myself at risk by doing that? That's something that's kind of like been taken away from us. And I think as a community that is very social, it has been difficult. It's been difficult for me, and I'm sure it's been difficult for you, and it's been difficult across the globe. But I know for a fact that the fact that we're not able to be in the same space has changed how we communicate with each other, and but it has also, you know, I think it has brought on I think a lot of people have sort of like receded into themselves, right? Where you know, a lot of people would, you know, they would wait for a chance to be outwards and like talk to people when they see people. But now, like, you know, people got so comfortable being alone that, you know, it's interesting, because I think there's definitely obviously sort of like so something quite negative that's come out of this, in the sense that I think, you know, a lot of people maybe are even getting very comfortable with being alone, or they are struggling alone and not actually talking to people because they just
not sharing. Yeah, not sharing.
Yeah, in our community, like a lot of times we don't ask for like someone, like you don't ask for help. You kind of just hope that you're going to be in the vicinity of someone and that person is gonna ask you, oh, how are you doing? And then you're gonna open up. Right. And so not being in spaces where you can be in the vicinity of people so that they can actually like reach out to you in person, I think has been quite detrimental. And I'm not exactly sure, like, you know, how we're going to sort of like remedy that, because I don't know how long we're going to be stuck in this situation. But I do think that that's the sort of like the biggest negative that's come out of that, is people not being able to share because they just don't have a person right there with them that they can talk to and tap to and get a hug from. You know, and get that comfort of being, you know, I have this person that's close to me who's listening to like whatever worries I have. And it really sucks. And also even things like celebrations, you know, like there's a lot of things that have happened where, like, you know, people have like, you know, done pretty well for themselves, or like, you know, they've wanted to sort of like want to celebrate with their communities and be able to say, hey, this is something great that has happened in my life and I would love to be able to connect and celebrate. And that's something that's been taken away from people too. You know, I think, you know, we probably, a lot of people probably are not thinking of that as a negative, but when you think about how, you know, how great it feels when you do something fantastic and you're ready to share it with the world, and you know, now you're kind of like just stuck with it. Oh, like, you know, it's great, but it's just me. And, you know, those endorphins that would usually come with you, like being excited, are taken away from you. So, like, you
that's
know,
true. And I think something you say that actually, and I've not thought of, is like, you know, usually when something's going wrong, when we're in a space where someone else is there, you don't have to say it, but somebody can always look at you and say what's wrong, right? And I feel like that, I've never thought of it that way, because sometimes for me, I was talking to a friend of mine and I'm like, I'm an introvert, like I'm the top-notch introvert. But people will never know that because every time they see me, I'm sort of like out here laughing and everything. They think this is me overall. But I'm like the truest introvert when it comes to, you know, needing my own space. But even for me, this thing is too much. Even for me, this has become something I'm like, you know what? I like to be alone, but this is beyond measures as far as like, you know, So I definitely get that. Let me do this. Let's go for a commercial, and I want to come back and talk to you more, a bit more about your organization and what you're doing. And then, so we can do it. Okay.
Sounds good.
And by the way, the reason why.
A coronavirus is a type of virus that can infect the respiratory tract, meaning the nose, mouth, throat, sinuses, or lungs. There are many types of coronaviruses, and most cause only mild illness, such as the common cold. But some coronaviruses can cause severe illness. The most likely way people can become infected is by droplets that contain the virus. These droplets carry the virus into the air and can enter through the nose, mouth, throat, and lungs of a person who is within 6 feet or 2 meters. The virus infects the lungs, causing the lungs to become inflamed. The alveolar sacs have to be healthy for the body to breathe in oxygen and breathe out carbon dioxide. Infection of the virus causes damage to the cells of the lungs and triggers an inflammatory reaction. Fever may develop. With severe inflammation, inflammatory fluid fills the lungs. This reduces the function of the alveoli, resulting in coughing and difficulty breathing. The oxygen level in the blood may decrease. In some people who become severely ill, other organs may be affected, such as the kidneys or the heart.
We will be back with the interview shortly. I just wanted to insert a little bit of news that I want to actually cover towards the end of this program. Good news, where we are looking at what the French lawmakers have done today, I think yesterday, Tuesday, unanimously voting to return prize artifacts to Benin and Senegal, which is more than a century after they were looted by colonial forces and hauled back to Paris to be displayed in museum. So I want to really touch on that towards the end of the program, and of course looking at other people, other organizations such as the Vatican, and asking them to give us some of our stuff too, because there is a lot there. Anyways, I'll talk about that towards the end of this program and really give you more details on this, but this is incredible. I guess finally France is doing something right. Let's hope they continue this trend. Anyways, let's go back to the interview with the Celestine Nema, and we talk about a little bit about our experience as Africans as well. Where do we go from here? And yeah, so part 2 of our interview. All right, Nema, thank you and welcome back. So yeah, we were talking about how our community is doing during COVID, and obviously we know business has to go on as well. So as far as the business, as far as the activities that you're doing, what has been the difficult logistically for you to set up, whether it's these virtual events or even the upcoming activities that you're planning to do? What has been the most difficult part for you as a leader in the community?
I think the most difficult part for me has been, well, one, this is definitely a new space. I had never had to hold a virtual event before. I know obviously like people had been doing this over the years and, you know, like, but this is something that I'd never actually had to do. And like I said, our community really relies on the idea of like connection and being in one space. And so I think what was very difficult was trying to figure out how to engage our community, especially like, you know, with everything that was going on, there's been a lot of things that are happening virtually. So the space is already quite, what's the word I'm looking for? There's just too much going on, you know? And so even when you're trying to get like the idea of trying to get like our audience to like pay attention to what we're trying to do virtually, like they are being bombarded with everything happening virtually now, you know?
Yeah, saturated yeah.
Yeah, saturated is the word I was looking for. So things are quite saturated. And I think it was quite difficult for us to figure out how we would engage our sort of like our community and our members, mostly because you know, like I said, things are saturated and they've been bombarded, especially with everything that happened with, you know, with Black Lives Matter over the summer. You know, there was a lot of events that were going on. There was a lot of great things that came out of our community. But unfortunately, it was quite saturating. You know, a lot of people eventually were like, you know what, I've had enough of all the Zoom calls. I'm on Zoom calls when I'm at work. I'm on Zoom calls for class. And now I have to be on Zoom calls even for social events.
Yeah.
And so it was a little difficult to get people engaged. And I know this because even with the event that we did, getting like people to sign up to come to the event was quite difficult. Like we literally had to message people like one by one, like, hey, remember this is happening, please come through. And that's not something that we'd ever needed to do, because a lot of times, you know, it was always word of mouth. Oh, you know, Youth of East Africa is doing this event on this day, and you know, just go tell all your friends. And that's all we ever had to do, really. But all of a sudden, we really needed to put in more effort to try and grab their attention and be like, hey, this is something that we're doing that we think will be great. Now, when we did the event, it was absolutely fantastic. Everybody who came absolutely loved it. And, you know, and they realized that that's something that they were missing in their lives in that moment. But it was a struggle to get them to that space, you know, because things are just a little...
they don't know what to expect. And
one, they don't know what to expect. It's completely different from what they've ever expected from us as an organization, because normally when people come to us, they kind of have an idea of what's going to happen, because we've been around for about 5 years now. We've done a lot of events in these past 5 years, and our members are very loyal members. So like, you know, we tend to have the same people coming through and bringing in their friends, their other family members, and you know, we're like a big family. And so all of a sudden people are just like, what exactly are you guys going to be doing? You know, like, I don't understand how this is going to work in terms of like thinking of how things used to work before. So, you know, those would be the challenges, I would say. So the first challenge would be the fact that, you know, everything that's happening in the virtual space is quite saturated. And so people just feel like they're being bombarded with too much information right now. And so, and the other thing is people just not knowing exactly what to expect of a virtual event. So I found that to be. Sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, I don't mean to cut you off. I wanted to let you finish your thought.
Oh, no, I think I was just repeating myself, so please continue.
Okay. So my question then is, obviously you're planning to do more of these events. We don't know when COVID is going to end. What is that? So I guess the thing you've learned is you've got to talk to, because do they still have this kind of level of fatigue when it comes to to virtual events? And if so, do you then have to do what you did, which is you got to reach out to everybody because that's what you have to do? Because I feel like for me also that's been the challenge, because we were running a leadership training during the whole COVID of at least the last 6 months, and we really had to reach out to every individual, which I didn't mind. But at some point you get to a point where you're like, you know what, I think this virtual thing is really getting to people. So for the future events, what are you going to do differently to make it easy for you, but also to maintain and maybe increase the audience that you need?
I think the one thing that is working for us at the moment is the fact that our first virtual event was very successful, and the people who attended absolutely loved it and really wished their friends were there with them. And so what I'm hoping for is the idea of, again, the idea of like, you know, just word of mouth being like, hey, you know what, we're doing this event again. And so our focus right now is getting those people who came to the first event to come and bring more people with them. Because they are already, at least we've already convinced them that this was something that was great, you know, because they stayed for the entire event and even a longer period of time. Like, I think the event was supposed to go from, I believe, from 8 to 10, and we were on till like almost midnight. Like, people just were on. And I was like, oh my goodness, this is fantastic. You know, like, it was a great way to sort of just like get the community back up. Like, people were like, you know, we were dancing, vibing to the music or whatever it is we were doing. It was really nice. And so I think what we're going to do is focus on trying to get those people to come back, and then just for them to bring more people with them, because it was quite difficult having to message, like, you know, tons of people. Like, yes, you know, luckily I have a very wonderful team, and our team was able to, like, you know, reach out to as many people as we could, and that's why we're able to get the people that we got. But, you know, it's time consuming. It's time consuming having a message. Yeah, like back and
absolutely
forth.
Especially when you have you know, we do this, a lot of this is voluntary time. You put it in, fitting that into your voluntary time. So being able to reach out to everybody, and then you have your regular job, it's really tough. And I commend you. I commend anybody who is doing this, for sure, because I know how hard it is to do.
Thank you. And yes, and shout out to the YEA team. Those guys are fantastic. They're like my dog.
Absolutely. I look forward. I'm looking forward. So this is where the COVID thing pisses me off too, because I'm looking forward. Like, the event that I joined, that I was a part of, that was amazing. I feel like that was like one of the very first few events that introduced me back into the community. And I definitely missed that. I missed that experience. You guys do a lot of incredible events. So you know, even the social media one. I think what we want to do is, even, I guess one of the reasons why we have this platform was to let other people know, right? Like, people in the East African community, they might know this event, but how about the people in the West, people in the South? Like, we feel like we need to connect the bridges that exist within the African community, which leads me to my next question, by the way. And this is maybe more serious. You can choose to answer or not, but where do you think we go as a community, as an AfriCanadian community? How do you, when you look at where we are now, regardless of COVID or not, where do you think we go? Are we in the right direction? Or, like, what are we doing wrong? What should we do to change that? I know it's a lot of things in one question, but I know you're involved in the community, so I'm sure you think about these things as much as I do.
Yes, I think about this day in, day out. I think, you know what, I think we are moving in the right direction, but slowly. That's what I think. I think there's a lot more that could be done. And I think a lot more of us could be involved in mobilizing our community, in making sure that we are represented in spaces that we're not represented, in making sure that that people pay attention and that people know that there are African Canadians who are actually around and that they were doing a lot of great, wonderful things. I think the only other thing that I would say is I do think that the African Canadian community, at least or people of African descent who live in Canada, a lot of us, it's a lot easier for us to just focus on ourselves and like our immediate families and our immediate friends, rather than look at us as a whole and think, as a whole, where are we trying to move? What are the spaces that we should be occupying that we're not occupying? Those are conversations that I don't see a lot of us having. And I would love for that to be the case. I would love for young people of African descent who live in Canada to rise up and say, okay, you know what? Yes, maybe our parents were not a part of this particular group, but we are going to be the ones who join in and stand up for it. I would love to see us in sports. I want to see us represented in things like arts and culture and sports, and because we are very good at working very hard and anything that's very professional. But I think in terms of other social aspects of living in Canada, we're very removed from them. And so
let me challenge you, Nema. Let me challenge you. I want to see Celestine Nema as either local MP or federal MP in the next. I don't know. I'm giving you 10 years, because for me that's even where I'm looking. I'm looking at your generation actually taking on that part of our, I feel like we're in these areas in sports and those are arts, we're good at that. We are on top of the chain, as maybe not African Canadian in general, but as Black people we are there, but we're not in the places where decisions are made. And honestly, I feel to me, if you guys, someone like you who has the background, you have education, you're in the community, you're already doing community organizing, why not? For me, if I meet someone like you 4 or 5 years from now and I have the ability to promote you, whether it's on a media platform or anything, that's what I'm looking for. So what do you think?
No, I do agree. I completely agree. I think we definitely need political representation. But that is something that is coming up. I think in the past few years, there's definitely a lot more Africans, I would say, or people who were born on the continent or off the continent that have are taking more and more of these spaces. Not as many as we would like, but more and more of us are coming up, and more of us are getting involved in politics, and more of us are paying attention to exactly what is happening in Canada as Canadians. But I think what the problem is, though, is that the people who focus on it, and then the rest of the community is left behind. In the sense that the people who are focused on this politics, yes, they're doing really great work for their community, and but I don't know if the community is right behind them. Because I feel like with other communities in situations where their people they're getting into politics, they bring their whole community with them. Their whole community is there, and they know if I don't know how many of us know how many Black people are in the provincial, in the different parties, in the different political parties or whatever, right? We don't really pay attention to that. So I think what I would love to see is, yes, these people who are doing the work, but if you can find a way to bring the community with us, so that the community is there to support, and the community actually knows what these people are doing, what their mandates are, what they're trying to achieve with the status that they've gotten. That's not something that I see being talked about or hearing in the community. So that's what I would I would love to see that change.
Okay, and maybe that's something.
It should be part of that change. I am very aware that I too should be a part of that change.
Listen, I have nominated you already. I'm waiting for you to accept the call. But I think this is it right here, because for me, I think that another thing we do, and this was a wake-up call for me, by the way. When I initially took on this call of raising awareness on PTSD and talking about what I went through, I met my community, and everybody was like, listen, man, no one else is here to do that. You've got to be the one to do it. And, so my goal was always to raise awareness, to advocate, but not necessarily be the lead. But once I realized the void that existed, I took that lead. And so I think for our community, that's where we must take, it's a sacrifice. It is really a sacrifice, because you could easily you could easily do so much. There is so much opportunities here. But as Africans, as the people who are coming from a background where we find that the space is void, we have to sacrifice our individual sometimes, not all the time. I really encourage people to first build themselves up. That's probably the difference between me and other people. I want you to first succeed as an individual. Because otherwise you can sacrifice and then end up alone, and then you look around and it's like, okay, what happened? All of this work I'm doing for everybody, what happened to me? Yeah,
so it has
I
a lot
really,
of opportunity.
yeah, it happens to people all the time, where we sacrifice for the greater good and everybody leaves us sort of hanging, and you know. So I want people to definitely focus on making sure they develop themselves. But at the end of the day, when you see a void, trust me, no one else is there to fill it. So for you, when that time comes, when that time comes, I want to see Celestine Nema's name on. I don't even care what party you run for, to be honest. As long as the interests are for the East African community, I'm fine.
I mean, you know, we'll see. We'll see where things take us. I never really think of myself as a very political person in that sense, but I really care about our community, and I really want us to be able to inspire each other and to motivate each other to to achieve great things and to be great Canadians. That's something that's like we tend to forget, that we are Canadians and we need to be able to take that name and stand like firmly and say it with our chest that we're Canadian, and have everybody else know that we are Canadians. Yes, we're African Canadians, but like stand and hold that strong. So I do hope that these changes are going to happen, and I hope more and more young people are going to be involved in politics, are going to be involved in all facets of Canadian living, because we are here to stay. We're not going anywhere.
A message from the Government of Canada.
Thank you, Celestine Nema. Again, we have 3 parts interview tonight. That was 2 parts you have seen. And we're going to come back to Celestine for the last part of the interview that we had earlier today. But in the meantime, what I wanted to do is remind you of our work in the community. As you know, we have been doing this. We have been doing this for the last 3 weeks, and we have another 2 months to go, where we are going into the African Canadian communities, talking to people, learning more about what they are doing during COVID, learning more about the organizations and the individuals, most of our leaders in the community, seeing what's actually how they're dealing with COVID, what are the solutions to the challenges that they're facing. And those things we do every day. Most days we go into the community. Some days we do interviews via the video calls like we did earlier today. But overall, the idea is to gather resources. The idea is to bring you information from the community, from people who are doing the work in the community, and then bring it back to you, but also create the data that eventually we're going to have and put it on a platform once our platform is ready, as we are building it right now. Anyways, so as we said earlier, we're going to continue to give you a bit of news here and there. For me, my focus today is going to be on this chunk of news that came from France, where France's MPs have passed a law that allows for the return of some of the artifacts that have been stolen, taken from Senegal and Benin. So I want to touch on that towards the end of the program, as I said. But what they're saying is, after 49 MPs in the National Assembly, the lower house of Parliament voted Tuesday night in favor of the bill, with none voting against, it will now head to the Senate. So I guess it's not 100% approved, but again, they're moving towards the right direction in France. And I think, as I was mentioning earlier, it's the Vatican should step in as well and do the same. I know the British also have a lot of our stuff that was taken from Africa. So hopefully to have all those things in the near future returned back to the motherland. Anyways, without further ado, let's go back to the interview with the Celestine Nema of the youth of East Africa, and we'll come back to you towards the end and let you know what's to come for tomorrow's program. If we are going to come to Canada, if we are here in Canada, I think a lot of us are here sort of like looking at the time and be like, you know what, when is it time for me to go back? I don't feel like many of us build. I don't feel like many of us start our careers thinking like Canadians. We are all thinking like Africans. And that, to me, that has to change. Because if you really want to build an African Canadian community that is strong, like we see Indian, the Jewish community, the Chinese community, you've got to build businesses, you've got to be in leadership, you've got to have structures.
Yep. And you have something that anchors you here, because that's something where, like, I love what you said, where a lot of us, you know, where we're here, and even including myself, you know, a lot of times like, oh my goodness, I miss back home. I just want to, like, you know, go back. But the truth is we need to have something that anchors us, something that holds us, whether it's a business, whether it's like, you know, getting into politics and actually, like, you know, vying for, like, you know, the Canadian people, and knowing that, you know what, the Canadian people are also your people, like being able to understand that just because we immigrated to Canada, that we are not separate from like, you know, the Canadian sort of like landscape. Like, we are a part of it, you know, we are ingrained in it.
I mean, you got to remember, except for the indigenous community, everybody else is an immigrant here.
No, it's true. It's true. And like, you know, and other communities are able to come and establish themselves. And yes, of course they establish, and they also go back home and they visit and they do all that, but they establish themselves here very well and like very, like, you know, steadfastly. So I think that's something that our community has to continuously work on. I think we're getting a little better at it slowly by slowly. A lot of us are starting to be very open to starting businesses, and you know, like, and like hunkering down and figuring things out, sort of like in the Canadian landscape. But, you know, not a lot of us, to be honest, not as many as I'd like. You know, a lot of us walk around and we feel like we're more African than we are Canadian. And so, like, you know, and that's like, you know, it covers everything else. Like, you know, you being African is above and beyond everything else. And then Canadian is just sort of like in the background. And it's weird because we live here, we work here, like we pay taxes, our kids go to school here. Like, you know, our whole life is pretty much Canadian, but there's this weird thing where we're kind of like not fully in for some reason.
Okay, so I think I'll say this, one of my mission as an individual, and you and I have spoken so many times, so you know this, one of my mission as an individual is that how can we really make it so, yes, we're African, you know, I think for me, I would say I'm Rwandan first, I'm African second, I'm Black third, I'm Canadian fourth, but all of that is me. And so there is definitely levels to all of these things, but you've got to be where you are. If we are here, we should be here. So my mission is really to help do that. Yeah, and you know, part of this building an AfriCanadian resource center, which is what we're doing with this interview and all the other interviews, all of the visits we're doing, is really to get African Canadians to see themselves in the Canadian experience. So you know, one step at a time, I guess. I'll play my part here, and I'll wait for you to play your part. And you know, I'm waiting for you to let me know what you're ready for. You know,
and we need people like you. We need people like you to call all the rest of us out and be like, "Hey, what are you doing? What are you?" Because yesterday, there's a lot of us who are putting in a lot of efforts, but like, you know, what is something that is going to like to last that you're doing, you know?
legacy,
like a legacy that you're trying to build, like you know, that you're trying to build that's going to stay behind, whether you continue it or someone else takes it on. But what is it exactly are you doing to try and do that? And you know, and I ask myself that question all the time. Especially having, like, you know, I've been running Youth of East Africa for the past 5 years or so, and we have created a wonderful community of people. We've done a lot of great things. We've had quite a bit of impact in terms of like mobilizing our community, bringing people together. There's lots of people who've, like, you know, formed all forms of like connections, relationships and mentorship relationships just through the things that we've done. But I don't know that I would say that that's a legacy per se, you know, because that's all pretty much like flowing water in a sense. Like, it's kind of just there.
But, I always say that if anything where you pass away and it's still existing, that's what the legacy is, and please continue.
And so I do think about this a lot, and I think, I don't know if you're going to ask me a question about this, but I could get into it right now. And so what we decided to do with Youth of East Africa is, the reason we actually started the organization was because a friend and I had, we came across an article that said that East African students had the second highest dropout rate in high schools in Ontario. And that was like mind boggling for us, because we were just like, what, how is that? Like, how is that possible? What's going on with that? And so we thought to ourselves, you know what, we are young East Africans, there's something we can do about this. And the plan was always for us to find ways to engage with young East Africans who are still, or students of East African background who are still in high school, to try and actually, like, mitigate that and like reduce those numbers, or like completely, like, slash them out, like completely take them out, because it's not okay that all these kids are dropping out of high school. That completely changes their trajectory in life. And so we decided that we were going to do that. Now, before we could do anything like that, we needed to mobilize our community. We needed to know who our community is. What are the resources that they can give us without us going out to ask for it from like, externally. And so what we did in the past 5 years was build this community that we have now. And the good thing that's come out of it is now we actually have a high school mentorship program that we're doing in partnership with the Toronto District School Board. And things are a little in the air right now because of everything that's happening with COVID. But the program is a fantastic program. It's a mentorship program that is geared towards Black students, not just East African students, but Black students, because Black students, to try and create a space where we bring mentors to speak to these students and diversify what they think of themselves in terms of like the career choices they think that are available to them. Because based on like the little research that we did, we found that, when you come from, depending on like the different sort of like space you're coming from, or your background or your culture, a lot of us are not taught about so many different career paths that people take. Especially like, coming in as an African immigrant, like, you think, okay, you're going to be a doctor, an engineer, a lawyer, maybe, I don't know, like a few other things in between there. But, there's a myriad, there's like thousands of career paths people could take, and people don't really think about it. And so what we decided to do is, as an organization, we've decided that the legacy that we're going to leave behind is making sure we create space where we, not space, but just even opportunities for Black students to be able to be shown the diversity of careers that are like, that span the globe, and so that's where we're starting from. And and I'm like we're still in the beginning stages of that, so nothing crazy has happened yet, but we're still in the beginning stages.
But that's good, that's amazing. I know, I will say this though, because obviously it depends on how much time you have in terms of like getting onto like paperwork and applications. But there is a lot of funds for this particular kind of programs. So if you have time, if it's something you're willing to explore, you and your team. For example, right now, part of what we got the funding for this time around, the second round of that is open now. Actually, yesterday, I believe I received an email where they have actually opened up the second part of that, where the funds are coming directly from the government of Canada, but through either Red Cross or United Way. And so if you're an organization that's already have a plan like this, honestly, I think you should go ahead and apply, whether you need a trustee or not.
No, I would absolutely love to get that information, because this is technically the baby of what we've always wanted to do, and we want to do it right from the beginning. We want to be able to say, like, our goal is to impact 200 kids by the end of next year. So if we're able to do that, that will be fantastic. And any support I can get, I'm taking it.
I'm sending you, as soon as we finish this phone call, this interview, we're gonna send you the same email, the details from the email. All you have to do is just an email, let them know what you're doing. They'll send you an application. You should, and we have other ones too. As long as you have the time to put in and get this paperwork done, the funds are available for something like that for sure. I don't want to guarantee because I'm not the one, but all I know is absolutely.
And I'm really glad that you're able to share this with me, because another thing that I think about is, there's a lot of resources, and there's a lot of resources that are available to our community, and a lot of us never really know about it because information is not passed around easily passed around. And I don't think it's because people are being stingy and they don't want to. I think it's just there's like a lack of communication
There is
and
no
like
connection.
there's no connection for us to be able to have the streams for people to pass on this information. And so, you doing something like this is fantastic because, like, all of us who are going to watch, we're going to be able to say, oh my goodness, there's this organization that I didn't know existed. And, what are the different ways you can communicate and get together and, like, whether we work together or not, or even if it's just like sharing information, that's something that is needed that I think our community has been lacking for a long time.
No, absolutely. And I know throughout the last few months, we're looking for organizations in the African community that are actually doing work. And so I was really looking, and I know some of the organizations, but also because you're trying to do this for the first time, I had to be careful. Okay, so these people, if I connect them, will they be able to actually deliver? But for individuals like you with the organization that I know you've been going for the last 5 years, all I have to do is just say, you need to be able to apply, because as soon as you get that, I know you're gonna do good with this kind of funding. And so and that's what we're trying to do with the platform that we're putting together right now. So you mentioned that you have research on Black youths in general, about the high school dropout and all of that. That's another thing we might actually ask you for. If you have the research, that'll be something that we can put on our platform as well for other people to access. But that's part of what we're trying to do. Like, how do we get everybody to get to one place, find all the resources they need, and if you go to East Africa, it's just a click away. If they want to go to any other organization, it's a click away. So that's really what we're trying to do with this. Yeah. So we're definitely gonna be reaching out for that as well, so we can actually place all of this in one place. But absolutely, we could talk forever, Nema, because we're fitting this into an hour program. Maybe my last question to you is, where can people find you, and maybe touch on some of the upcoming programs that you have, and then let us know.
Okay, so places that people can find us: Youth of East Africa. We have a website, youthofeltafrica.org or .org. It's easy. If you can get on the website, all our contact information, our social medias are on there. Our email is on there. It's very easy to we're usually pretty quick at responding back if anybody tries to reach out to us with any questions or suggestions, or even if they just want to join the community or they want to support us or work with us, whatever the case, just reach out to us that way. Our email is pretty much just youthofeltafrica@gmail.com if that's something that you just want to quickly type in. Otherwise, sorry, what else did you? So my contact information.
What do you have coming up? I know you mentioned you had a couple of programs coming up these next few.
Yes, so we have a couple of things coming up. So there's the high school mentorship program that I just talked about. And so that high school mentorship program right now, because things are with the school board, we're not exactly sure. They're not exactly sure what's going on with them either. So it is going to be starting in January. And what I will be looking for are mentors. Anybody who is currently working professionally, who was willing to come and speak to high school students about how they got to their career, what their schooling was like, what their experience has been working as a Black individual, as a Black person in Canada. Anyone who wants to share that kind of information with students, is going to be a virtual space, so you don't have to go anywhere. You just, wherever you are, you call in and we can sort of work it out. If you want to sign up for that, please. Our website has literally all the information you need for you to sign up. There's a form that you can fill in for us to know exactly what your career is. Sorry, not what your career, but what your what field you're in, so we can figure out how we're going to connect you with the different students. Another thing that is coming up is we have a finance workshop that we're running. One of our team members is running. And our finance workshops are usually quite popular because we pass on tons of information, from budgeting to investing to mortgages. There's just lots of information that are going to be thrown at you. So if you're really interested in that, please check our website or our social medias. The day that we're running it will be on November 4th. It's a Wednesday. It's likely going to be around between 7 and 11. We haven't really decided on a time yet, but it's going to be in the evening between 7 and let's say 9 or so, or maybe 6 to 9. We haven't, sometime around then. And then we also have a virtual social event coming up. That's going to be a lot of fun. There's going to be some trivia questions. There's going to be music. There's going to be just random chats, people just talking to just get the juices flowing. And that is going to be happening on November 13th. So yes, That's it for me.
Thank you so much. And I know, yeah, thank you much. And I look forward to the virtual event. And also let people know it is the Youth of East Africa on Instagram, right?
Yes. Youth of East Africa on Instagram, Youth of East Africa on Facebook. We have a Twitter, it's Youth of EA because Youth of East Africa was too long. But if you want to follow us, our main social media are Instagram and Facebook. So Youth of East Africa on Instagram and on Facebook. Easiest place for us to follow to get all the information on everything that we're doing. And if you have any questions, youthofeastafrica@gmail.com. Shoot us an email. We'll get back to you prompto.
Thank you so much, Nema. And like I say, we can talk forever, but let's save some for the next time you join us. Really appreciate you joining me this afternoon, and we look forward to seeing all of this work that you have in place. And of course, like I say, we're gonna keep in touch and work just to get our people where we need to be. And
absolutely.
in the meantime,
you're doing such wonderful work. This is like, I am so glad that you finally decided to get in this space and run this, because I just see great things coming. So thank you for having me. I really appreciate you thinking of me and our organization and giving us this platform for us to be able to to pass on our message and say the things that we're doing. It means the world. Thank you.
Absolutely, you guys are doing incredible work, and all we want to do is highlight everybody's work, to be honest. And I don't want to go any further without touching. I mean, East Africa, that's my home. You guys are keeping it. You're doing what needs to be done, and that's really what we want to do. Just highlight the work and allow people who are giving their own free time to at least for people to see what you're doing. Because I think sometimes we do the voluntary work and people don't realize how hard it is to do this. And so if we can just, if we can shine the little light we have, if we can shine it, hopefully there will be bigger lights that come and, make sure your work is well highlighted.
Honestly, very true. It's very true. Like if you shine light on, and you never know who's going to see it. Like, someone might be like, this is exactly what I needed. And so this is a fantastic way to do it.
Absolutely. So again, thank you so much for joining us. And we hope to do this again. In the meantime, stay safe. Stay safe.
Stay safe you as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
There are several practical measures you can take to protect yourself from the new coronavirus. One of the most important is regular, safe and effective hand hygiene, using soap and water or alcohol-based hand rub. Here are the steps recommended by WHO to follow. You too can have safe and clean hands anywhere. Now I'm calling on the world to take the WHO Safe Hands Challenge to be ready for coronavirus.
All right, so as you can see, you can imagine why I keep saying that we need Celestine to think about, considering when she's going to be running for office. I think for me, anytime I see young people involved in community, all I look at is like what's missing in our community. And right now, there is definitely a lack or a void within the social, as far as policies are concerned. Who are the people that are forming policies? And I think for many of us as black people, as Africans in Canada and in North America, we know that there is a lack, there is a void when it comes to these high-level positions. And so why not think about, some of our young people actually thinking about, considering whether they want to run in the near future. I'm not saying Celestine should do it, but if she does, I'm definitely behind her 100%. I've seen what she does in the community, and I know her heart is in the right place. And we need our own people on those tables. And so, yeah, waiting to hear that answer, Celeste. Whatever you decide, please let us know. And hopefully by that time, we'll have a larger platform to promote and to push, to be behind you 100%. And if it's not you, I'm sure somebody from the youth of East Africa or East African community overall. And if not that, the African community. But yeah, thank you so much for joining us. We thank you. We hope to continue working with you. Yeah, incredible. We had an incredible time with you, Ali, and yeah, look forward to the work that you're doing in the community. The other thing we wanted to do, as I promised to you, is finish this piece of news from France. And I really wanted to take time and stay there as far as the news is concerned, because it's not just France. But let's focus on France for a little bit. I say that we're talking about the bill 49, the bill that the 49 MPs passed in the National Assembly in France. They're saying that if it's approved, France will officially restore the Benin 26 items from the treasure of benzene, looted during the 1892 pillaging of the Palace of Abani. Sorry if I'm butchering these names. But I'm saying that also we know this because the French President Emmanuel Macron first announced the plan to repatriate the cultural artifacts in 2018, following a report that he had commissioned from from academic researchers. So they're saying that the law which will go to the Parliament for consideration centers on the treasures, on the transfers of ownership of several African objects, including a saber from Senegal, a royal throne, and a sculpture of the king of Aboni, as well as statues of God of Gu, will be returned in the course of 2020, perhaps at the beginning of 2021. Once again, this is good news. We of course hope that the Parliament of France will make a good decision and send all these artifacts back home, because that's where they belong. And really, if you think about it, for a country like France to hold hostage artifacts of another country, of a continent, for a country like England, because we know there's so much in the museums in London. We know, of course, Vatican has immense treasures that were looted out of Egypt and the rest of Africa. For these institutions, these entities to hold artifacts that belong to a continent, I mean, in 2020, is laughable. And it's laughable from an African perspective. Because really, when you think about it, yes, I don't know, I mean, there is always many excuses, but for somebody to come into your nation and take some of your belongings, and then years later when we're independent, we're still begging and asking for these kinds of artifacts, it's laughable to me. But it's not that we haven't tried. I know many of our leaders have tried to get these artifacts back. I don't know how many of you know of Dr. Sheikh Anta Diop, Theophile Obenga, Dr. Ben, and so many others who have worked tirelessly for the last, I think, 50 years. Many of these individuals have passed away, of course. Actually, all of the ones that I just mentioned have passed away. Dr. John Henry Clark, who is a historian in America. All of these giants who fought so tirelessly to get the artifacts that most of the British museums have taken from Africa, of course, the Vatican, and now the French, to get these things back to Africa. Yet many times they were being laughed at, and even some of them went into Egypt and they're like, listen, we need these artifacts returned to Africa, and the Egyptian governments will be like, no, we're good, we don't need this. If you want to know more about this, follow some of the lectures, most of them are online. There is even Dr. Ivan Van Satam who tells a lot about this, because his journey follows this. Where they have tried for years to get some of the contents that belong to Africa, and they were not able to. So anyways, I just wanted to touch on that, because there is that level of history. It's not just this decision. There has been a war that have been fought for years and years and years, and finally we're getting some of the decisions. Hopefully the French will make a good decision to return these these items back to where they belong. Anyways, that is the show for tonight. We hope to see you again tomorrow. Remember, follow us on Instagram at RCHC or RCH Center, or Afri.Canadian on Instagram as well. Follow us on Facebook. Hopefully some of you are following us there right now, and on YouTube on RCH Center. And we are here every night at 6 p.m. So let somebody know, share this, make sure they join us tomorrow. We'll see you then. Peace.